The Protect College Sports Act is causing a lot of chaos. What does it mean for Utah's realignment future, Big 12 or Big 10? We're breaking it down on this episode of Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. I'm JT Wistersill, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. Excited to be joined by the Professor Wild Ute, my friend Philip. And today's show, we're talking about fall camp so far. Also talk about Utah's value as a brand overall, not just Big 12, but overall, and some interesting thoughts on Big 12, Big 10, conference realignment future amidst all of this Protect College Sports Act chaos we have going on. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code Locked On. It's all caps and no spaces. Locked On to get $10 when you trade $10. Philip, the Protect College Sports Act is not finalized. It's not passed. We're going to have to wait a while till that is the case. But there are different intricacies and things going on in this that make Utah's future very interesting, whether that is Big 12 or Big 10. What can you tell us?
Right. This is going to be pretty explosive, JT. So everybody just buckle up here and everything. We're going to talk about Utah's stance in conference realignment with the Big Ten based on everything that I've heard and where we position what the PCSA, Protect College Sports Act, means for Utah. And it looks like that bill's not actually going to go through, not going to get done, but there's actually some huge tidbits, breadcrumbs that we need to be aware of that have everything to do with realignment. But first off, just setting the table here, where is Utah when it comes to Big Ten realignment? Utah right now is sitting in about 22 to 23 position in the Big Ten. And that means there's 18 schools in the Big Ten right now. The Big Ten is going to have to expand out to at least 22 to 24 for Utah to get into the Big Ten. So you need 4 to 6 spots open.
Who's ahead of you? Who's ahead of Utah right now, would you say?
Notre Dame. Absolutely. Yeah. Notre Dame is the apple of the eye. Miami, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, and maybe Clemson. And get this, JT, it's going to be actually Duke or Georgia Tech as well. All those schools are right there. A lot of them are ahead of Utah. With you're looking at Georgia Tech, maybe I got Duke, you're kind of on that same plane and everything. But there's Notre Dame, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia are certainly ahead of Utah. Hey,
why Virginia?
Realignment happens. Why Virginia? Because it's a new state footprint. You get even more access into the DC market too. Like you've got a little bit with Maryland. But check this out, JT. The Big Ten tried to get Virginia. They've invited them in the past with North Carolina. And Virginia and North Carolina declined the Big Ten, and that's why they added Rutgers and Maryland. They've swung for him before. They want him again. It's a new state footprint, a growing state, a wealthy state, everything that the Big Ten wants. Look, the Big Ten wants in North Carolina and Virginia. So does the SEC. That's a battleground in realignment. Everybody wants those two states and those two brands. But that is where Utah, that's the competition on the board. Not all those schools are going to go to the Big Ten. A lot are going to go to the SEC. The SEC is going to pluck up 2 to 4 of those schools. So Utah needs to see the Big Ten expand to 22 to 24 to get in. And that looks like it's more and more realistic the more that time goes by. But let's talk about the PCSA real quick and the breadcrumbs. And this is pretty crazy stuff, actually. And this has massive ramifications, I think, and pointing to exactly where this is going. So the PCSA bill has lost a lot of steam. But before it did lose a lot of steam, the senator in Utah, Mike Lee, actually put in an amendment in the PCSA last minute to remove Section 205 of the PCSA, or to amend it. And that is the anti-expansion cap for the PCSA. So that means that the anti-expansion cap would block conferences for going over 19 schools. That's the PCSA was trying to limit conference realignment and saying, hey, you can expand out to 19, but nothing beyond that. And Mike Lee actually put in an amendment to blow that up, to remove that, to make it open for especially the Power 2, the Big Ten, and the SEC to expand beyond 19 schools. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, really, there's only one major senator in the U.S. that was supporting that type of amendment to blow that away, and that was the Florida senator. So Florida, Utah, why would Florida care about that? Because they're trying to get Florida State into the SEC of the Big Ten Conference. 100%. That's how
Same
it
with
is.
Miami. In Miami.
And Miami's a private school, but there could be intricacies too, right? But with Utah, is curious. Why would Mike Lee try to put an amendment in to remove that 19 conference cap? If Utah and BYU were just content being in the Big 12 forever, why would he ever put an amendment in to remove that? Good question, right? Think about it. This is a breadcrumb into the future and how maybe Mike Lee, I'm speculating here, how Mike Lee might be understanding this scenario and trying to open up an avenue for Utah to maybe get into the Big 10 one day over the next 2, 4, 5 years. Okay. That's the take for the this PCSA. It's big news, actually. So a lot of people are going to say, well, why Utah? Utah doesn't qualify for Big Ten. Utah this and that. I'll give you 6 reasons why Utah is a serious Big Ten candidate. And actually, the number 1 Big Ten candidate out of everybody in the Big 12. It's not really close, actually. Number 1, the football brand. Number 2, it's the premier football brand in the Rockies. Number 3, relationships, especially with USC. Utah and USC are very close. USC wants Utah in the Big Ten if they can get them in. Utah's a geographic bridge to USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. Utah's AAU status, and Utah has an Otro Capital deal that we've talked about on this channel before that could fund itself while going into the Big Ten at a reduced payout share, and that could fund Big 12 exit fees if those were to come. Utah has 6 reasons right there. All 6 of them are legit, and this ain't no joke, JT. Like we're really talking about this. This is more serious than most people make it.
It's a great job by you, just the way you framed it and laid it out too, because as you said, it's just very interesting that Utah senator and Florida senator, and we've heard Florida is probably like Florida State. That's been one of the top realignment places. They've actually, I think, of all of the schools and whether the Big 12 or the ACC, Florida State is like straight up, like I think tried to go to the SEC before too. Like, so that's a big one there. We know that. So that's where Utah isn't being as for that if that is their intention, but it seems strange. And for those of you who say, like, why would USC want Utah in the Big Ten? They beat them a lot. Like, yes, Utah did recently, but what is this also about? Would you rather take your chances against Utah or continue to fly cross country and play some of these games? I think it makes a lot more sense for them to want to add someone like Utah. Philip, I want to hit on this before we talk about Utah being so much more valuable than some of the Big 12 teams, and actually kind of be a bridge that connects it there. Where does brand value come from? Where do we get to this point where, hey, it's not always wins and losses too. We know that. So what builds up brand value?
Yeah, it's football success over time. It's winning over time, not just winning in any given year, but sustained winning over a long period of time, and getting more and more exposure, getting bigger platforms to play on, and winning in those platforms. So more viewership in big games, more high rankings. I've mentioned this on this channel too, JT, but it's absolutely important from like a television standpoint to be a top 15 AP ranked team or CFP ranked team because there's eyeballs on you. It's all about being ranked in the top 15, especially and stuff. So people are paying attention to you, you're significant, and winning those games consistently. That's how you build brand in football is you win consistently over time. And there's a slow growth unless you're a blue blood brand of just getting more and more brand equity and respect nationally. And guess what? Utah has more respect than BYU. BYU doesn't have that history. Utah has 20 years of history, really pretty dang elite football history of wins. BYU has a couple. And so like people, when they leave BYU out of the playoff discussions, it's because they don't have that brand equity built in with respect nationally. Utah does. I'm serious about this. Utah does. BYU's a great brand. Utah's a great brand, but you build that up over time by winning and winning in bigger and bigger games and getting more national respect.
And Utah's been able to do that longer than BYU without a doubt. So just how valuable is the Utah brand? That is the question we are going to be diving into next on Locked On Utes. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Kalshi. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at the season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Can the Utes win 10 games yet again? Can they make the college football playoff? You can head over to Kalshi and make your predictions right now. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position, trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use the code Locked On. It's all caps, no spaces. When you use the code Locked On to get $10 when you trade $10. Kalshi, Kalshi, trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions are and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory today. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. Philip, the Wild Ute, back here with me. Professor Wild Ute, that is. Philip, The Athletic released an article recently talking about brand value. Utah has the most value of any Big 12 school. You actually released something very interesting on your X account. You guys can give them a follow at the Wild Ute, where you said Texas and Oklahoma are worth 75% of the Big 12's total value. And if you actually remove Utah and Tech, the two most valuable brands, Texas and Oklahoma alone are worth almost as much as the other 14 teams combined. Wow, Philip.
Yeah, that's explosive, isn't it? There's a lot of crazy tidbits. This is legit valuation reporting by the Athletic. They used a method of like, hey, let's take a few years of your revenue from your athletic department and apply some multiples. Like that's basically timesing it by 3 to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, depending on how they determine like the growth of your brand. Okay, that's how they come up with these figures and stuff. That's how it works in the private equity world, guys. It's the same way. So I think it's pretty sound what they put together. Here are the takeaways. Utah's number one of the Big 12 with a value of $638 million, the football program value. Again, that is number one in the Big 12. If you want some sobering info here, okay, JT, I haven't posted this anywhere, but like if you look at it, not trying to dig on anybody, it's just the truth. You've got to look at the truth here. So if you're looking at the bottom of the Big 12, Houston and UCF at the bottom of the Big 12, Houston's worth, according to the Athletics brand value, $100 million. That implies that Utah's worth 6.4 times as much as Houston football.
Wow.
UCF's a little bit more than Houston, but less than 150 million. Utah's worth about 5 to 6 times more than UCF football. And so you're seeing a little bit of a discrepancy here in how valuable some brands are in the Big 12 versus other brands. Look, some emerging brands, Texas Tech and BYU are emerging brands. That's your number 2 brand, Texas Tech, and your number 3 in the Big 12. And those are growing pretty quickly and stuff. They will be right there. To me, it looks like there's 4 teams that are emerging as the most valuable brands of the Big 12, and that's Utah, Texas Tech, BYU, and TCU. Oklahoma State still has a chance to rise if they're good at football and they get more exposure and stuff. But those 4, TCU, Utah, BYU, and Texas Tech, really are going to be the drivers in the Big 12 brand value for years to come. And I think the numbers are going to show that out. A couple other things to consider here. All right, this is crazy because I hear a lot of times like, hey, Professor Wild, why would the Big Ten add Utah? They wouldn't bring any value to the Big Ten. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit already. Guess what, JT? Even with the lower multiples with Utah being in the Big 12, and check this out, if Utah were going to get into the Big Ten conference, that valuation of $638 million would skyrocket. The same program, same everything, with more exposure, a bigger time conference, Utah might be $1 billion brand. Seriously. Wow. And right now, even today in the Big 12, Utah actually has more worth in its football program than 7 Big 10 schools. You want the evidence there? Minnesota, Rutgers, Maryland, Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, and UCLA. Utah's worth more than all 7 of those. In addition, Utah's worth more than 6 SEC programs being in the Big 12. That's Ole Miss, who was in the national championship last year. South Carolina.
Final Four, yeah.
Yeah, Final Four. Yes, Final Four. Yeah, then the Final Four. South Carolina, Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. Utah is worth more in the Big 12 than all of those. Why is Utah worth so much? We've talked about it for sustained winning success. Also, the Otro Capital deal. Everyone bags on that, but guess what? That lifts up your dang valuation because you can also commercialize your operations a lot more, and people want to invest in that like they're doing with Otro Capital. That was a genius move. I don't care what anyone says. I work in the finance world. Otro Capital with Utah, especially if Utah gets into the Big Ten Conference, which was the driver of that deal, will go down as one of the most genius financial moves of all time in college sports. Straight up. It really will. So I think that these valuations tell you a lot, really, about the makeup of future conference makeups, the Big 12 makeup, the strongest brands in the Big 12, and what brands you really need to build if you're Brett, you or Mark. Really, these 4 brands, TCU, Utah, BYU, and Texas Tech, should be getting more prime time, should be really built up as much as possible to maximize value.
Do you think, like in an Oklahoma State's case, is that something that they're just the 2 down years have knocked them down, or were they always a little behind? Because when we come into the Big 12, they felt like they were on that same level as some of those other ones. Is that how quickly, though, a down year can take you out of that?
Yeah, these valuations, like a lot of them, again, athletic department revenue multiplied by something, by some number. Is
Mhm.
that a 3? Is that a 4 or 5? The multiple is what gets interesting with these valuations because that considers things like your growth of your market, like how much business investments coming into your market. It's these subjective factors that will be applied based on like how valuable the market and like the opportunity in the future would be. The
Mhm.
problem with Oklahoma State is the market, right? You're in Stillwater, you've
Stillwater.
got
Yep.
yeah, and like in
Mhm.
Oklahoma, you get Oklahoma City, a little link to that and stuff. I mean, you've got the Oklahoma Sooners in the market. They're not the flagship, but they're a dang good brand, and people watch Oklahoma State. But really, you can't maximize the growth of the market, the sponsorship opportunities, everything involved in that as much as you could in Salt Lake
Mhm.
City. Salt Lake City, like you state of Utah, is the number one best state to live in, according to U.S. News, number one place for business.
Yeah.
That's why we're considering getting an MLB team here. And here's an important factor too, JT, that nobody talks about. That's huge for Utah and BYU. Guess who's probably never going to get an NFL team in the market?
Utah, never. Mhm.
And there's reasons for that, but that's actually a value add for any conference looking to add either Utah or BYU because there's no competition versus the NFL team that would take all the eyeballs. Utah and BYU football is the NFL in the state of Utah. So that
Mhm.
just lifts the valuations for both of the schools beyond what an Oklahoma State could produce. Now, TCU is a different example. You're in Dallas, you've got more business
Dallas.
investment, there's growth,
Mhm.
there's reasons for that.
Yep.
Texas Tech, you're in Lubbock. You got Cody Campbell. You can get some eyeballs, but the opportunity for you to really grow in valuations and everything is going to be much more capped than a Utah or BYU, which basically uncapped given this market potential.
What about Arizona State? Just in that Phoenix area.
Man, well, here's where Arizona State runs into issues, just like we talked about with the NFL team. You've got the Arizona
Mm.
Cardinals in market.
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
kills the Sun Devils. If there were no Cardinals, then it would be all about Sun Devil football and also University of Arizona Wildcat football. And all of
Yeah.
a sudden, you'd have a lot more valuations for those. There'd be a lot more eyeballs, intrigue. But when you've got NFL in the market, just like Colorado Buffaloes, you've got the Denver Broncos, you're second fiddle no matter what. So
Yeah.
Arizona State in Colorado had the same problem. Even USC has the same problem. You know, you got multiple NFL
Mhm.
teams in the city and stuff. And with the Rams coming back to LA for USC is now third place in football, right? They're not going to overtake those NFL teams. It's a huge value add driver for Utah
Mhm.
and BYU to not have NFL coming in anytime soon, although we probably deserve an NFL franchise.
Yeah, has a number of great points, and like you said, even like Texas, yes, the Cowboys are there, but it's Dallas Fort Worth. It is one of the biggest cities.
Massive.
There's so much there versus even a Phoenix, like you said. It's just more of a secondary thing, and there's other multiple colleges distracting, taking away from versus TCU is such a massive brand. Plus, it being in Texas, the football state. If you ask most people about their thoughts there too, so it's a lot too. We're gonna wrap up with Philip's thoughts on this as well as talk about what we're looking forward to of week 2 of Camp Scally. Still feels weird to say, but we're talking about it when we come back. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concert, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part isn't just deciding what you want to attend. It's really getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans are using Game Time, the app built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help you get the events you want without the hassle too. I mean, personally, my biggest pet peeve is when you find a great deal, you're all excited on a normal ticketing app, and then all of a sudden you get to the checkout or your average ticketing app and you go, wait a minute, why'd the final price jump? That's something that Game Time does not do. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They show you the upfront pricing right away. Also get a panoramic view from your seat, so you know exactly what kind of a view you're getting when you use Game Time. Game Time is my top ticketing app choice, and it can be yours too. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets to use every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON, it's all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, we're going to talk a little Camp Scally in a moment, Wild Ute, but let's just wrap up. Any last thoughts you have on this whole discussion? Realignment, Protect College Sports Act, and obviously Utah's brand value too. Anything else you want to throw in here?
All right, here we go. I'm going to give you something right here that nobody else
All
will
right.
give you. Okay. Based on like the assessment here, I think that we'll know exactly where Utah's future is by December of 2027. That's 16 months away, JT.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the Big 12 bylaws require a 16-month notice period for you to leave the conference. There's complexity with this. Like Utah would need to take the Big 12 to court to figure out what kind of grant of rights buyouts, if there's anything associated with the membership agreement that's a little bit muddled, but Utah would still need to go to court to see what the full official buyout amount would be.
Mhm.
Like the longer the realignment slows and the longer this is drawn out, the better it is for Utah. Utah wants to get closer to that grant of rights. End date is 2031 for the Big 12 because it's going to be cheaper to get out of the conference. But it's a 16-month notice period. And so you'd have to file by December of 2027 to get into the Big 10 conference by the 2029 football season.
Mm.
That's something to note. Okay. So when we have realignment conversations, from June of 2027 to December of 2027 is going to be massive. I think next year is going to be insane. And especially Utah will know our fate by December of 2027.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. And like you said, just 16 months away, in some ways far off too. But yeah, so much still to happen. Protect College Sports Act still going through in limbo. We got all this as well with realignment. Wild times. And amidst all that, we got a football season coming up, of course.
That's
Fall
right.
camp underway. Utah Utes hard at work. Great to talk to the coaches, see the players in person last week. We get to see them for week 2 coming up here too. I feel like Utah's in a good spot. Wild Ute. I feel like it was great to hear the defensive tackle group has that chip on their shoulder. That's a group that's got to be better for Utah's run defense to get better. Loved hearing Colton Swan talk about how he's feeling about the linebackers too. That's another thing I thought that was really encouraging and positive as well too. Where we're at, the wide receiver core continues to earn rave reviews. So yeah, just excited to get to see and talk to more of these guys this week. Hopefully, Bird Ficklin is someone that we'll get to speak to coming up too, as well as several of the top guys on offense and defense too. But I'm liking where Utah's at right now. What are your thoughts on where Utah currently is, Philip, as well as what more you want to see from them in the second week or just moving forward throughout fall camp?
I love the energy around the program. It's just so dang positive. It seemed like people are just like so excited to be there. There's a looseness. Look, there's like no expectations. Like this year, it's nuts. Like Utah's going to be a top 25 preseason team. Utah's not getting talked about at all. Everyone's saying, hey, like Whittingham's gone. I've got no trust. Everyone's like, I've got no trust in Scally. Like Monk, that's the big narrative push, I feel like. And so there's just no expectations for this football season. And it's crazy because you look at this roster and the more you dig into it with like the offensive line being solidified and gelling, seemingly like all the reports in camp that the line's playing really good here. You've got Alex Harrison's playing great. Like you've got Zero Williams has got really positive reviews. You got Isaiah Garcia and Cedric Jefferson, positive reviews. I love that. This offense is going to be dang explosive. Like if you heard McGivern talk too, like he is going to mash this up. We're going to toss the football. We got explosive runners. We got the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 as a tandem. And like this wide receiving core, this Ricky Johnson guy. Seriously, have you heard much about this guy? I mean, of course you have, JT, but Ricky Johnson's getting some pretty good reviews. I mean, you're so deep in this wide receiver room. We haven't had anything like it before. Utah's going to be much more explosive passing the football than we've seen in a long, long time. And so I feel really good about the offensive line. I think the line is much better positioned than thought initially. Now, flipping into the other side of the football, no problem with the linebackers, the secondary and stuff. No really issues there. I like what I'm hearing. It's still all about the defensive line and defensive end. This season's going to hinge on those two positions, especially that defensive end position. Are you going to be able to get pressure with Holtzclaw? Cash Dillon's getting big-time reviews. He's like a grinder out there. He's supposed to be a breakout candidate. I like what I'm seeing here. You've got a little bit more depth than I thought at defensive end too. So look, we'll see what happens. That defensive interior, we'll see how good they are. They're getting dogged a lot, right? They're even like mentioning that, like, hey, they're getting. That's a lot of people think that the defensive line is going to be the holdback for the season. If Utah struggles this season, it's going to be the interior defensive line. They're hearing that all the time, like they said. So there's a chip on the shoulder. You mentioned it before. I like what I'm seeing, but it's still going to come down to defensive line, defensive end.
Really feel like Ethan Day is starting to do a good job too. I actually think, based on some comments that were made last week, I think Day is actually going to be the starter opposite Holtzclaw. We'll see how it all shakes out because Cash Dillon still be a valuable rotation piece, and Paul Fitzgerald sounds like he's getting healthy, coming back too. So I feel good about where this team is at. I feel like they have. I would still predict them to be a top 3 team in the Big 12. I think they should. I predicted BYU right now too. So I think they got a great shot to go to the Big 12 title game. Can you take care of business with a favorable schedule in line? Take advantage of this right now. You don't have to go to Texas Tech. We don't have to go to Provo. We don't have to go to Kansas State, to Baylor, some of these other random people. Oklahoma State's another one. It's just a sleeper this year. We miss ASU too. Yes, still see Houston, Arizona, but there's opportunities on the schedule for the Utes, and I'm excited to see what they can do this fall. Excited to learn more too about this team coming up this week. Philip, thank you so much for coming on. Please let everyone know where they can find and follow more of your great work at covering all things realignment right now.
Yeah. College Football Mafia. Come check us out so you don't flunk realignment.
Well, we appreciate you helping us make sure we don't flunk it as well. Thanks again, Philip.
Thanks, JT.
That's going to do it for day one of this week's episode of Locked On Utes. We'll be talking more ball with you tomorrow, recapping the first day of media availability in week 2 of Camp Scally. We'll see you then.